keadaan trafik di seluruh negara masih berjalan lancar setakat ini. Hari ini yang kembali berfungsi sebagai yang pertama daripada kita orang. Cerita sikit perasaan dapat berkas negeri ini. Okey, dan hari ini saya bersama dengan keluarga saya pergi dekat Cameron lah. Sedikit pengalaman mereka melakukan perjalanan lintas negeri hari ini. Assalamualaikum. Saya saya berasal daripada Sabah and then macam hari ni kita orang berpeluang untuk pergi bercuti dekat Cameron Island since PKP Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Let us praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us the chance to come together again, inshallah, to resume our online lectures. I hope all of you are doing well, and since the MCO has already been, I would say, the conditions or the has been loosened a bit, so now we are in PKPP. Hopefully our lives will proceed back to normal soon, inshallah bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So today we shall continue with our lesson on in our last class we went to ijtihad and akhbar al-ahad, whereby we looked at how the process of ijtihad or basically we understood that ijtihad is part and parcel of life, whereby there will always be differences of opinion when it comes to issues of ijtihad, and we have seen some examples. For example, we looked at certain hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam which pointed out to this nature as well. We looked at the hadith whereby the angel of mercy and the angel of punishment were in dispute about the soul of the man who killed 100 persons. And we also looked at the hadith in which the companions also differed when it came to the order of the Prophet ﷺ during the expedition of Tabuk for them to pray Salatul Asr at Bani Qurayza, and some actually prayed Asr along the way, while some waited until they arrived at Bani Qurayza. And the Prophet ﷺ did not disapprove or did not actually condemn any of the companions. And that is how when it comes to the evaluation of hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and also the study of the sanad, the transmitters in the chain of transmitters, there might be differences among scholars based on their own particular ijtihad, and that is why also this will affect the when it comes to the soundness of the hadith, there might be differences of opinion on the matter as well. So we looked at that issue. So today we'll just go through a bit about hadith based on the number of transmitters. Okay, let me share the screen. Do we have any problem here? Okay. Okay. So based on number of transmitters, hadith generally can be divided into two. We have hadith mutawatir and also hadith ahad. And we also looked at the definitions of both, whereby hadith mutawatir is basically that which has been transmitted by an infinite number of transmitters at every stage of the sanad, that it is impossible for the transmitters to come together and perpetrate a lie against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the case of hadith ahad, it is basically a hadith, in which it does not fulfill the conditions of tawatur. Okay, so when it comes to hadith mutawatir, it is generally it is divided into three types. We have mutawatir lafzi, mutawatir ma'nawi, and mutawatir amal. We also looked at mutawatir, in which we have arrived at certain concepts based on various hadith. For example, we looked at the concept of awrah. Hadith ahad, on the other hand, can also be divided into three types. We have hadith gharib, aziz, and mashhur. And then gharib is divided into two, nisbi and mutlaq, and mashhur is divided into istilahi and ghair istilahi. So we look at these one by one, inshallah. So mutawatir, as I mentioned just now, the technical definition is what is narrated by an indefinite number of people in such a way that precludes the possibility of their agreement to lie upon the Prophet ﷺ, narrating from those before them from the beginning to the end, meaning that in every stage of the chain of transmitters, the number of transmitters are indefinite. Okay, meaning that there are many. What is the number? We'll see that scholars differ when it comes to the number which to them qualifies for the hadith to be mutawatir. Okay, so literally mutawatir means recurrence, repetition, succession, and continuously recurrent, meaning it happens again and again. So there's no precise definition for a large number of transmitters. So although various minimum number has been suggested, some said it should be more than 3, so some has suggested 4, some 5, 7, 10, 12, 40, 70, etc. Okay, it is termed recurrent hadith because of the involvement of many people in its chain of transmitters, because there are many transmitters of that hadith in each level of the chain. Okay, so an example of a hadith which is mutawatir, mutawatir lafzi here in this case, whereby all the transmitters or most of the transmitters would have transmitted this hadith verbatim, meaning that there are no variations in the lafz, in the wording of the hadith. So this is an example: man kadhaba alayya falyatabawa maq'adahu minan nar. Whoever tells a lie against me, then let him occupy his seat in hellfire. So this is an example of hadith mutawatir lafzi, meaning that a large number of transmitters at each level of the sanad have transmitted this hadith. Okay. So what is the criteria of hadith mutawatir? We must remember that there is an indefinite or large number of transmitters, and that this indefinite or large number of transmitters, it must occur throughout each level of the chain of transmission. In each level of the sanad, there must be this multiplicity of transmitters or narrators, and that the possibility of the transmitters perpetuating a lie is impossible. It must be impossible for them to come together to perpetrate a lie against the Prophet ﷺ, and the narration must be based on sense perception, meaning that the Sahaba who reports the hadith must have witnessed the action of the Prophet ﷺ, or must have heard what the Prophet ﷺ has said. So it must be based on hearing or sight, okay, based on sense perception. We also mentioned this in our last class, whereby the position of hadith mutawatir is prescribed certainty and definite knowledge, and its authenticity is automatically confirmed, meaning that if a hadith is mutawatir, there is no need for us to then investigate whether the hadith is authentic or not. And it is necessary to believe in its authenticity, such as the authenticity of the Quran, and hence denial of a hadith which is mutawatir can lead to disbelief, kufr. Yeah, we've also mentioned that even the Quran itself, even the Quran, the lafz was transmitted from one generation to another. It is considered as tawatur, the means of it arriving to us, from one generation to another, because many transmit also the Quran from one generation to another, and there is no differences in terms of lafz, in terms of wording. So mutawatir here is divided into lafzi, ma'nawi, and amali. So verbally recurrent, that which has been reported with the same wordings in all different chains of transmission. So hadith, you must understand that there are various chains of a hadith. Yeah, there are various chains, various sanad. That when you combine these sanads together, all of the chains, in all of the chains of transmission, the wording of the hadith is the same. Verbatim. An example is man kadzdzaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar. One who lies about me deliberately, must prepare himself for a seat in the hellfire. So this is an example of a hadith which is mutawatir lafzi, meaning that in all or in most of the chain of transmission in the sanad, the wording of this hadith is the same. And then there is that which is conceptually recurrent, that which has been reported with different wordings but all lead to an identical meaning or an identical concept. For example, the hadith on the manners of performing salat, such as the raising of hands during certain intervals, that the Prophet ﷺ used to raise his hands, during certain intervals in salat, when he was saying takbir Allahu Akbar, for example, during the starting of the salah, that he would raise his hands. So that there are various hadith which points to this fact, or various chains of hadith which mentions about the raising of the hands, and all this hadith combined together, you can arrive at the conclusion that the Prophet ﷺ indeed raised his hands during certain intervals of salat. And then you have that which is mutawatir amali, so that which is necessarily known from the religion and is continually practiced without disagreements by Muslims from one generation to the other, with the belief that the Prophet ﷺ did it or ordered it. For example, the 5 daily prayers or Hajj, or fasting. I mean, this has been inherited from one generation to another, and this practice is from the Prophet ﷺ, indeed from the Prophet ﷺ. And as such, this is also considered to be mutawatir amali, that which has been practiced, from one generation to the other. Okay. These are certain compilations of hadith mutawatir in which we can find hadith mutawatir. So we have al-fawaid al-mutakathira fi al-akhbar al-mutawatirah by Imam al-Suyuti, nazam al-mutanathirah min al-ahadith al-mutawatir by al-Katani, and nazam al-la'ali al-mutanathirah fi al-ahadith al-mutawatirah by al-Zabidi. So these are just some examples of compilations in which the compiler has collected a hadith which is considered to be mutawatir. Okay. Now we move on to ahad. We've also looked at the definition. I also mentioned this in the beginning of our class just now. So ahad literally means the plural, or it is literally the plural of wahid, the plural of one, or solitary, alone, that stands alone. So what is the definition of hadith hadith ahad? It is basically that which does not meet the conditions or criteria of mutawatir, meaning that which does not fall into the category of hadith mutawatir, automatically it will fall under the category of hadith ahad. Okay, so that which does not qualify, or that which does not meet the conditions or criteria of hadith mutawatir, they are considered to be hadith ahad. Okay, so basically it's a hadith which is narrated by people whose number do not reach that of mutawatir at some stage of the sanad, at some stage. Remember, we mentioned this now when we defined mutawatir, this multiplicity or this indefinite number of transmitters must occur at each level of the sanad, each level of the chain of transmission. We've also mentioned this, that hadith ahad indicates probability and possibility rather than yaqeen, rather than certainty. And as such, hadith ahad could be sahih, could be authentic, it could be agreeable, it could be hasan, it could even be da'if, weak, or even mawdu', even forged. When it comes to hadith mutawatir, its authenticity is automatically approved or proven. However, when it comes to hadith ahad, when it comes to the soundness of the hadith, it might fall under one of these categories. So when fulfilling all its requirements, acting upon a hadith which is ahad is obligatory, and it is not necessary to believe in its authenticity. Therefore, its denial does not lead to disbelief. So the denial of hadith ahad does not lead to disbelief, unlike the denial of hadith mutawatir. Because why? Because there is that percentage of probability and possibility that that hadith might be unsound. Okay. So these are the divisions of hadith ahad. We have hadith ahad, which is known as gharib, aziz, and also mashhur. And we mentioned just now, gharib is divided into two, nisbi and mutlaq, while mashhur is divided into ghair istilahi and istilahi. And we will look at these divisions one by one, inshallah. So gharib basically comes from the word al-ghurbah, which means far away from one's native land and relatives. It can also mean strangeness, how you pronounce this word, peculiarity, and or exile. Okay, so what is the technical definition of hadith ahad? It is that which is transmitted by one transmitter at any level or stage of the sanad. Meaning that if at any stage of the sanad there is only one transmitter, this hadith is automatically identified as hadith ahad gharib. Okay, so the term it is termed strange due to its isolation or being solitary at any level or stage of the sanad. Okay, so how do we identify a hadith which is gharib? It is either a single transmitter is found transmitting it from a well-known imam. So this well-known imam transmits this hadith. However, we find only one transmitter, despite this imam being well-known, only one transmitter transmits this hadith from that particular imam, which is well-known. Because he is well-known, we would have assumed that there would have been many who would transmit hadith or that particular hadith from this particular imam who was well-known. But in this case, only a single transmitter transmits that hadith from a well-known imam. Secondly, if a hadith is solely transmitted by a group of transmitters from a certain region, you find that the hadith is only transmitted, for example, by transmitters from Kufa, or from Baghdad, and you do not find any other transmitters from other regions transmitting this hadith. So, if such is the case, this hadith is also considered to be ahad. It's considered to be ahad gharib. Okay. All transmitters from one locality transmitting from transmitters of another locality. I like to give this example. For example, if the transmitters at a certain level, all of them comes from Pasir Mas, and in the chain of transmission, you find that those who transmit from them came from Kota Baru. So transmitters from Kota Baru transmit that hadith from the transmitters who are from Pasir Mas. Okay, in that case, it is peculiar why only transmitters from a certain region or a certain locality transmits from transmitters of another particular locality. Okay, so this solitary, or this, when we mention there is only one transmitter, it does not definitely mean a single person, but it could also mean transmitters from a particular or only the region, or in the other case, transmitters from one locality transmitting from transmitters from another locality, whereby no other transmitters from other localities transmit that hadith from that group of transmitters. So you have gharib nisbi and gharib mutlaq. So what are the definitions of ahad gharib mutlaq and ahad gharib nisbi? الغريب مطلق ما كانت الغرابة في أصل السند وأصل السند هو طرفه الذي فيها الصحابي. That which is strangeness is at the beginning of the sanad, and the beginning is the level of the companion. Meaning, in this case, only one Sahabi, for example, transmits this hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the strangeness occurs at the origin of the sanad, and the origin of the sanad here is the level of the companion. So omit that word, the beginning of the sanad. I prefer to use the word asal here, the word origin. Please replace this word beginning with the word origin. So the origin of the sanad is at the level of the companion. Even though throughout other levels of the sanad, the number of transmitters is large. So even though many successors, many tabi'in might transmit this hadith, however, because there is only one companion who transmits that hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith falls under the category of hadith ahad gharib mutlaq. Okay. Gharib nisbi, that which is strangeness occur in any level of the sanad. مكانة الغرابة في أثناء سنده, in any level of the sanad, and Ibn Hajar divided it into transmitted solely by a reliable transmitter, meaning only one reliable transmitter transmits this hadith. Even though, at a particular level, even though at other levels there might be many who transmits from him. Okay. Or transmitted solely by a particular transmitter from another particular transmitter. For example, only A transmits that hadith from B. Only A transmits that hadith from B. Or transmitted solely by a group from a particular region. We've mentioned the example just now, whereby only transmitters from Kufa, for example, transmits that hadith. Or transmitted solely by a group from a particular region from another group. We've also mentioned this example just now. So these are certain books in which the compiler has collected hadith which is categorized as gharib. Okay? Or you can find hadith gharib in these collections of hadith. We move on to hadith aziz. So this is another category under hadith ahad. We have hadith aziz. So aziz literally means very rare, seldom, to the extent that it is assumed to be in non-existence. So this is the meaning, one of the meaning of the word aziz. Or it could also mean strong, distinguished, or solid. So what is the technical definition of hadith of aziz here? Hadith ahad, which is aziz. The definition is that which is transmitters are not less than 2 in every level of the sanad, although in some levels or stages it might be more. ما لا يكون رواته أقل من 2 في كل طبقة وإن زاد عليه في بعض طبقات. That which transmitters are not less than 2 in every level, although in some levels or stages it might be more. Okay. It is termed aziz due to its infrequent narration or it being strengthened by other transmitters. That is a narration agreed by 2 transmitters throughout the whole chain of transmitters, or at some level or stages there should be no fewer than 2 transmitters. Because if it's fewer than 2, only 1, then automatically it will be hadith ahad, which is gharib. But in this case, if there are 2, then the hadith is termed as hadith ahad aziz. Okay, it falls under this category. And then you have hadith ahad, which is known as mashhur, and this is divided into 2, istilahi and ghair istilahi. Mashhur al-istilahi, it is mashhur, the word mashhur literally means famous, well-known, widespread. We also have this word in the Malay language, mashhur. So what is the definition, technical definition of hadith mashhur? it is that which its transmitters are not less than 3 in each level of the sanad, and if there are more than 3 at one level or all levels, this additional number of transmitters do not reach the level of mutawatir. Okay, so basically not less than 3 in each level of the sanad, and if there are more than 3 at one level or all levels, this additional number of transmitters do not reach the level of mutawatir. So just now, you just have to remember when it comes to hadith aziz, the number to remember is 2. When it comes to hadith mashhur, the number which should come to your mind is 3, yeah, or more, as long as it does not reach the level of tawatur. So this is mashhur istilahi. And then we have that which is known as mashhur ghair istilahi, which basically is not part of hadith ahad, which one would use to categorize hadith based on the number of transmitters, because it has no connection with the number of transmitters. So al-mashhur ghair istilahi, or also known as mashhur lughawi, means that which is often spoken about or widespread without any definitive conditions, meaning a hadith which is popular. So whether the hadith which is popular is authentic or not is another issue, yeah, and whether it has many transmitters or not also is not the issue here. It is just that the hadith is widespread and popular, and there is no scrutiny to the sanad of the hadith. Okay. So what is the position of hadith ahad? Yeah, it could be authentic, as we mentioned just now. It could be hasan, da'if, or even mawdu', and its popularity does not necessitate its authenticity. So even though the hadith ahad is mashhur istilahi, yeah, or mashhur ghair istilahi, it does not necessitate the authenticity of the hadith. Meaning, one still needs to study and scrutinize whether the hadith in question is actually authentic or not. Okay, so that is basically hadith based on the number of transmitters. So inshallah, I hope this is quite clear. Yeah, hadith based on the number of transmitters, it is divided into 2 types. You have hadith, let's go back to the table. We have hadith mutawatir and hadith ahad. Yeah, mutawatir and ahad. Just remember the definition of hadith mutawatir. It is that which is transmitted by indefinite number of transmitters at each level of the chain of transmission, that it is impossible for the transmitters to come together and perpetrate a lie against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When it comes to hadith ahad, it is that which basically does not fulfill the conditions of mutawatir. Okay. So those are the 2 main takeaways from this lesson. Basically, there are the definitions of hadith mutawatir and hadith ahad. And also, when it comes to hadith mutawatir, it is automatically authentic. You do not need to look into the sanad to study whether the hadith is sound, whether the hadith is hasan, or could it be a da'if, or could it even be forged. No. If a hadith is mutawatir, automatically it is authentic, and because of that, one has to believe in hadith mutawatir, and disregarding hadith mutawatir can lead to disbelief. Yeah, because why? Because hadith mutawatir serves definitive knowledge or definite knowledge. Yeah, unlike hadith ahad, where there is certain possibilities. Yeah. It is conjuncture al-zan, yeah, it is not al-yaqeen. So that is why when it comes to one who rejects hadith ahad, such a person does not fall into this belief. So inshallah, I hope this is clear, yeah, when it comes to hadith ahad and mutawatir. So this category of hadith is based on the number of transmitters. Another topic of importance which we shall go briefly today, yeah, we will look at briefly inshallah, is hadith al-mawdu'. Yeah, I'm sure most of you might have come across this term before, hadith al-mawdu', which is basically a fabricated hadith or apocryphal hadith. Yeah, I prefer the word fabricated because it's easier to pronounce. Okay, We will look at the factors which contributed to the emergence of such hadith. Don't worry about this slide. Yeah. Okay. This hadith is important, whereby the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith recorded by Imam Muslim in his Sahih. So this hadith is considered authentic based on the criteria set by Imam Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, يَكُونُ فِي آخِرِ الزَّمَانِ دَجَّالُونَ كَذَّابُونَ يأتونكم من الأحاديث بما لم تسمعوا أنتم ولا آباؤكم فإياكم وإياهم لا يضلونكم ولا يفتنونكم. Towards the end of time, there will be great tricksters, Dajjalun, and falsifiers, Kadhabun. They will bring to you statements that neither you nor your fathers have ever heard. Beware of them, lest they do not misguide you and tempt you. Yeah. So here the Prophet ﷺ is warning against a hadith which are fabricated, which actually did not exist. Okay? And it happened in the course of history. There were events and instances where people abused the name of the Prophet ﷺ and fabricated hadith for various reasons. So what are these reasons? We will look at the reasons or the factors which contributed to the fabrication of hadith. And we have this hadith, which is an important hadith. We also looked at this hadith just now when discussing hadith Mutawatir. Lafzi, man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu minan nar. Whoever lies upon me intentionally, then let him prepare his seat in the hellfire. So this is a severe warning from the Prophet ﷺ for us, not to fabricate anything, not to say something and attribute it to the Prophet ﷺ while the Prophet ﷺ did not say it. So that is basically what is known as hadith mawdu, fabricated hadith. And there are various warnings from the Prophet ﷺ regarding this. And we see there are several hadith also in which the Prophet ﷺ talks about lying, and that it is a sin to lie. So for example, this last hadith, woe to him who tells things speaking falsely to make people laugh thereby. Woe to him, woe to him. So even if joking, we are not supposed to lie. So this reminds me of a hadith in which an old lady came to the Prophet ﷺ, and then she asked the Prophet whether I have a chance to enter paradise. And the Prophet ﷺ replied jokingly that that no. Why? Because there are no old people in paradise. And this old woman became sad, and then the Prophet ﷺ then said to her that all those who will enter paradise will be made youthful. So if you are old, once you enter paradise, you will be young again. Okay? So even while joking, the Prophet ﷺ did not lie. So these are the cause of fabrications, or the factors which contributed to the fabrication of hadith. Firstly, we have politico-theological conflicts, that which started off as political conflicts then led to theological conflicts. So that is why it is termed as politico-theological conflicts. And this occurred after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, especially after the demise of Uthman radiallahu anhu, after the murder of Uthman radiallahu anhu, in which this was considered as the starting point of the greatest fitnah upon the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, which caused the split of Muslims into Sunni, Shia. So this was a contributing factor to the fabrication of hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then we have also Islamic liberations, which cause socio-cultural conflicts. We will look at these factors one by one. Due to the expansion of Muslim lands and many non-Arabs embracing Islam, so these caused some socio-cultural tension, which led also to the fabrication of hadith. And then we have overzealous devotion and asceticism, and then Zanadaqa and classical atheism also We will look at this in some detail. Personal interest and popular preachers, and also fanaticism over a school of legal thought. Yeah, fanaticism over a school of legal thought. So there were some political campaigns after the demise of the Prophet ﷺ. We have those known as the Nasibah, the opponents of the Prophet's household, and those who cursed his family and committed acts of cruelty against the Prophet ﷺ's family. And then we have those who are termed or known as Rafidah, those who are in favor of Ali radiallahu anhu and rejected the legitimacy of the Khilafah of Abu Bakr and Umar. And then we have Bakriya, the proponents of Abu Bakr's Caliphate. And then we have the proponents of Uthman's Caliphate and his legacy, the Umayyad Empire, known as the Uthmaniyya. Then we have the Umayyah, the proponents of Muawiyah. And the list might go on. And as you can see, it revolves around particular figures, yeah. And the nature of the conflicts were political in nature. So there were, for example, several hadith, many hadith, which were fabricated due to this. Why? Because they wanted to lend some legitimacy towards their cause. Yeah. Because they knew that Muslims revered the Prophet ﷺ, and whatever the Prophet ﷺ said or did was considered to be part and parcel of the deen itself. So by fabricating hadith, they hope to gain more support for their cause. So there is this fabricated hadith. You see Muawiyah on my pulpit, kill him, for example. Yeah, this obviously was fabricated by the opponents of Muawiyah, and then we had the proponents of Muawiyah who then fabricated hadith. So there's always this counter reaction. The trusted ones are three: Yani Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Jibril, and Muawiyah. And then the Bakriya, those who supported the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, would then also fabricate hadith. Be happy Abu Bakr, the one who prepares the water for your wudu is Jibril, the one who provides the towel is Mikael, and the one who holds your legs until you reach the place of worship is Israfil. Yeah. And Al-Khalili narrated that a scholar of hadith once said, I figured out that the people of Kufa had forged more than 300,000 hadith on the virtue of Ali and his household. So this is the proponents or supporters of Ali fabricating hadith in favor of Ali and his household and the Ahlul Bayt. So it began as political conflicts, which then shifted to something more theological in nature. Why? Because political events, people started to question whether they were predestined or not. Yeah. So this idea of predestination came into play. Yeah. So were the rulers predestined by God to be what they are? So were the rulers or those in power during that time, were they predestined to act in a certain manner? So if there were oppressors, were they predestined to be doing so? Yeah. To act in that particular manner? Or if a ruler does not fit his position, will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove such leaders from their position? Yeah. So that is why this idea of predestinalism arose as a result of this political conflicts. And that is why we have various groups. You have the Jabariya or Mujbirah who propagated the idea of predestinalism, meaning that everything has been predestined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and one should just accept it. Yeah. Then in the Qadariya, free will and human empowerment, and the proponents of free will and human empowerment. The Murji'ah, non-judgmentalism, Al-Adl al-Tawheed, rational justice and theology, called by the opponents as Mu'tazila. Yeah. The Khawarij, the rebels for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also the Jama'ah, the established government and community. I don't worry too much about these labels. This is just to illustrate that how a political conflict might lead to a theological one. Yeah? And we see this today also in our day and age, whereby particular groups would argue that for their cause, using certain religious justifications to provide religious legitimacy to their cause. And this is not something strange. It has happened in the past. And as such, several or many ahadith were fabricated to support these theological groups. Yeah. For example, two groups in community that will not receive any good reward in Islam, the Murji'ah and Qadariyah. One would automatically know that this hadith is fabricated. Why? Because the Qadariyah and the Murji'ah did not even exist during the time of Prophet ﷺ. So how could the Prophet ﷺ allude to the fact that the Murji'ah and the Qadariyah are two groups in his community that will not receive any good reward in Islam? So these are some other hadiths which I shall not deliberate further. You can go through them by yourself. Socio-cultural conflicts. As we mentioned just now, due to the liberation of lands, many non-Arabs embraced Islam, and this caused certain socio-cultural tension. So there was certain ethnic and tribal fanatism. For example, we have in this case Yahya bin Abi Sulaiman al-Madini making up the hadith, move away the black people from me, move away the Sudanese or black people from me. How can the Prophet ﷺ utter such words when in fact the Prophet ﷺ was not a racist, and he even said that there is no superiority based on one's color or one's tribe. And also due to nationalism or patriotism, also some people fabricated hadith. For example, we have here Ahmad ibn Kinana al-Shami, who made up the hadith, if Iman is lost from this world, it will be found in the heart of Sham, the heart of Jordan. Why? Because he was a Sham nationalist. He had this great affection for Sham to the extent that he even fabricated hadith on the virtue of Sham, virtue of Jordan. Also fanatism of language. Remember we mentioned just now that many non-Arabs embraced Islam. So there were various hadith which were fabricated to basically say that the Arabic language is superior than other languages. Love the Arabic language for three reasons: because I'm an Arab, the Quran is in Arabic, and the language of the denizens of paradise is Arabic. So this hadith was fabricated by Yahya ibn Buraid. He made up this hadith. And we have another funny hadith here, which was fabricated. The most hateful language to Allah is Persian. Khuzi, the language of Khuzistan and used by kings in domestic occupation, is the language of Shaitan. Bukhari is the language of the denizens of hellfire. Arabic is the language of the denizens of paradise. So these ahadith are basically fabricated. Is the mawdu'? Oh, sorry. I just looked at this comment. Is the mawdu' hadith syurga di bawah taufik counted as mashhur? Yes. In that sense, it is considered as mashhur because it is widespread. Meaning that the hadith is widespread despite it being fabricated. So that is considered mashhur ghair istilahi. Mashhur ghair istilahi. It is a popular hadith, despite it being mawdu'. Okay? Hope that answers Haziq. Sorry, I just saw your comments. So overzealousness also contributed to the fabrication of hadith. So some people fabricated hadith due to good intentions in this case, but again the end doesn't justify the means, as we will see. So we have here the case of Nuh ibn Abi Maryam al-Jami', who is known as Abu Isma. So he fabricated hadith concerning the virtues of the Quran surah by surah. And why did he do so? He tried to justify fabricating such a hadith because he said, I saw the people turning away from the Quran and they were distracted by the fiqh of Abu Hanifa and the maghazi of Muhammad ibn Ishaq. So I made up this hadith hoping that God will reward me upon this, because he saw people busying themselves with fiqh, with maghazi, instead of the Quran. So he fabricated a hadith on the virtue of the Quran surah by surah. Indeed, there are virtues of certain surahs in the Quran, but not each surah one by one. Yeah, it does not appear in such a form. So as such, this hadith was fabricated by Abu Asma, and he tried to justify why he did so. And then we have also in another case, also when it comes to the Quran here, he said, I made them up. Yeah, what did he made up? He made up a hadith about the virtues of the Quran, which it says, whoever recites such and such will have a reward of such and such. Yeah, again, Maisarah fabricated this hadith. Yeah, and he said, I made them up in order to encourage the people to read the Quran. And in another, there's another example here. The servant of Ahmad, the servant of Ahmad, who fabricated hadith to make the hearts of people mild and sympathetic. So this servant was considered to be an ascetic, a zahid, someone who is zuhud, and he fabricated the hadith. To soften the hearts of people. Okay. And he was actually considered to be a good person. Why? Because on the day of his demise, all the markets of Baghdad were closed as a sign of mourning. So they mourned his death. So despite that, he fabricated hadith. He fabricated hadith with good intentions. But again, the end doesn't justify the means. Classical atheism or zandaqa. We will look at what does zandaqa actually mean, or the zindiq actually mean. Some of you might be familiar with the term majus. Those who appear to worship the fire. And actually, they are considered to be the followers of who? Zoroaster. Or rather a follower of what the Hellenistic world associated with Zoroaster, which was the ability to read the stars and manipulate the fate that the stars foretold. Okay, so basically Zoroastrianism is a religion founded in ancient times by Prophet Zarathustra. It's nothing to do with Zarathustra, known to the Greeks as Zoroaster, and it was a predominant or dominant world religion during the Persian empires, and was the most powerful world religion at the time of Isa alayhi salam. And it had a major influence over other religions, and it is still practiced worldwide, especially in certain parts of India and Iran. So how does this word zindiq or zanadiqa or zandaqa appear? So basically, Zan or Zen are the commentaries of Avesta, which is a primary collection of the sacred texts of Zoroastrianism. So the commentaries. So from Zand, that word Zindiq or Zandaqa was derived. So Zindiq is a person who embraces Islam but secretly holds the belief of Zoroastrianism. So is a Zindiq a munafiq? Yes, they are considered to be munafiqs. And munafiq is a more general term. So within the category of munafiq, there are those who are zindiqs, those who appear to have embraced Islam, but they held the beliefs of Zoroastrianism. So they fabricated hadith, and weird hadith, really weird hadith. As you can see in this example, God created the angels from the hairs of his armpits and chest. Just reading such hadith, one would certainly question whether this hadith is actually a hadith. So these are actually fabricated hadith, and it's identified that those who fabricated them are those who held the beliefs of Zoroastrianism. Okay, because they had certain concepts. When it comes to the concept of God, the concept of stars, interpreting the stars to determine one's future, etc., etc. So these are just some examples of the hadith which therefore fabricated. Some also fabricated hadith for personal interest, or seeking favors. So we have here in the case of Riyadh, when he saw Khalif al-Mahdi playing with a pigeon, then suddenly it reminded him of a hadith, whereby the Prophet said, there shall be no wager except in the case of racing camels, hoofed animals, or in the case of shooting. Meaning it is allowed for one to participate in contest when it comes to racing camels or hoofed animals such as horses, or in the case of shooting. And then suddenly Riyadh added the words pigeon. Added the words pigeons to that hadith. Why? Because Khalif Mahdi was playing with a pigeon at the time. Khalif Mahdi knew that this was indeed a fabricated hadith. He said, verily your neck is the neck of a liar who put false words in the mouth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why Riyadh did that? Because he wanted to please Khalif al-Mahdi. And in fact, that is not the case. Even Khalif Mahdi was not pleased by that, even though he rewarded Riyadh with a certain sum of money. Also to make a product more sellable, some would fabricate hadith. In this case, there is a fabricated hadith on watermelons. It was a food consumed by Adam in paradise, and Iblis said, I fear none of his children will stay with me in the hellfire, for Allah has blessed melons, and whoever tasted them. How could a blessed person be in the hellfire? So this appears to be a hadith which is fabricated to make watermelons more sellable. Interesting. Luckily, there is no fabricated hadith on durian. Also, for sub-personal interest, we have, for example, Muhammad bin Malik al-Ansari, who was a blind man who made up the hadith. Whoever assists a blind man 40 steps, Allah will guarantee for him a place in paradise, because he wanted, people to assist blind people such as him more, so he fabricated this hadith. And we have Sa'ad bin Tarif al-Iskaf, who was angry with the teacher who punished his son. And when he knew of this, he suddenly fabricated this hadith. Teachers are the worst amongst the people, for they don't have mercy upon the orphans and they are always harsh towards the needy. Another example is Abdullah bin Atal al-Ibrahimi, who was a teacher, who fabricated this hadith, give zakat and give it to the people of knowledge, a teacher. So now he's trying to include teachers among the asnaf of zakat, when such was not mentioned by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So due to some personal interest, there were people who fabricated hadith. So this is an example of book, Popular Preaching in Religious Authority in the medieval Islamic Near East, which might be interest to some of you, because we also have popular preachers who fabricated hadith because they wanted to become popular, because no other people might have transmitted or narrated this hadith. So one way to become popular for them at the time was to say, oh, I have this hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which no other transmitters have transmitted. So we have here certain examples of non-authentic hadith, who he cuts his nails on Saturday will be spared from illness, and who cuts his nails on Sunday will have poverty taken away from him. So if one would just look at this matan of the hadith without even looking at the sanad, you can identify that it is fabricated, because it does not make sense. Because it does not make sense. And then we have another example of non-authentic hadith. In this case, the punishment for someone who does not cover, for example, here is a woman who did not cover her aura. So this hadith also, sometimes when you look at the hadith and it mentions a very severe punishment for what can be considered as a sin which is not so severe, you have to be more careful and investigate regarding the authenticity of this hadith. Finally, fanaticism over a guru or school of legal thought also might induce a person to fabricate hadith. As you all know, when it comes to matters of fiqh, there are various madhabs. The most famous four, we have madhab, the Shafi'i madhab, the Hanafi madhab, the Hanbali madhab, and also the Maliki madhab. So due to the fanatism over this school of thoughts, the followers of these schools fabricated hadith in support of their particular school of thought. So for example, those who tried to humiliate Imam Shafi'i, yeah, the fabricated this hadith, there shall be a man in my ummah called Muhammad ibn Idris who will be more detrimental to my ummah than Iblis. And then the Ahnaf, yeah, some of the Ahnaf will fabricate the hadith to elevate the virtue of Imam Abu Hanifa. Yeah, there shall be my ummah man called Abu Hanifa who is verily the beacon of my ummah. Okay, and also fabrication of hadith to support the positions of certain schools on a particular issue. Yeah. For example, while making wudu, to rinse the mouth and sniff water into the nose 3 times. This, if I'm not mistaken, is a popular position of the Shafi'i madhab. But however, this hadith is fabricated. Yeah. Or whoever says every line the Iqamah once is not from us, he should say every line twice. This is to support the position of the Hanafi madhab in the case of Iqamah. So where can we find hadith mawdu'? Yeah, we can find, some scholars have made the effort to compile hadith mawdu', and these are some examples of collections of hadith mawdu'. Okay, I hope this is clear, inshallah. Sorry if I have gone through this quite fast. We'll be having only one live lecture this week, inshallah, and I will provide you with a video by Jonathan Brown for you to watch, inshallah, for your class on Wednesday. I will provide the link, and I hope you will benefit from that video. And I hope you have benefited from this class as well, whereby we've gone through hadith based on the categorization of hadith based on the number of transmitters, hadith ahad and hadith mutawatir. And we have also looked at hadith mawdu', fabricated hadith, and that which has contributed to the fabrication of hadith. And we've identified a few factors, political, theological factors, that which started as a political conflict, then evolved into a theological conflict, and then socio-cultural conflicts, which basically due to the expansion of Muslim lands or liberation of lands by Muslims, many non-Arabs against Islam, and these caused certain socio-cultural conflicts. Yeah, and then we also looked at the overzealousness that contributed to the fabrication of hadith, whereby the fabricators had good intentions, yeah, but again the end doesn't justify the means. And also the case of Zoroastrianism, yeah, which crept into the ummah, whereby there were people who embraced Islam despite concealing their Zoroastrianism belief, and that tried to infiltrate the corpus of hadith with various weird ideas and claiming it to be from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then we have those who have certain personal interests, such as they wanted to be close to the rulers, or they wanted to make certain items more sellable. So they also fabricate hadith to provide more support, for example, to the goods that they were trying to sell. Yeah. And then we also have those who were fanatics of a certain school of thought, or school of fiqh. And because of that, they fabricate hadith to support either the founder of that school of fiqh or the position which that school of fiqh promoted. Okay, so I think that is sufficient for today, inshallah. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask in the WhatsApp group, or personally you can WhatsApp me, or through any other means, inshallah. And I'll be more than happy to assist in helping you with that, inshallah. Okay, stay safe, everyone. Hopefully, let's pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that things will be back to normal very soon. And perhaps the next semester, the next coming semester, semester 1, 2020-2021, we can resume classes as normal. But for this semester, we will still have to resort to such means of synchronized classes through online platforms. Okey deh. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.